my hand slow on an old rag, letting my fingers brush the .45 under the workbench. Through the cracked barn door, I counted. 1 black Escalade, tinted, no plates. 2 Harley-Davidsons, polished chrome, fresh treads, rented muscle. 3 hired guns, boots muddy from my land before I'd even seen them. And front and center? Karen, HOA President Mitchell. Pink sweater, clipboard, smile sharp enough to slit throats. Frank. She waved like we were at a damn bake sale. We need to talk about your situation. Bear's teeth gleamed in the sunlight. I didn't shush him. The biggest biker, 250 pounds of steroid rage, kicked my gate. This ain't up to code, old man. I glanced at the steel frame my wife welded before the chemo stole her hand's steadiness. The last thing she ever built. Karen fluttered a cease and desist order. Your gate permit expired. We're here to remove it. One of the bikers unclipped bolt cutters with a snick. I reached into my pocket. Karen stiffened. What's that? My garage door opener. Insurance, I said, and pressed the button. The world exploded. The explosion wasn't the Hollywood kind. No fireball. No slow-motion shrapnel. Just a concussive whump that kicked dust into the air like a sandstorm. The biker holding the bolt cutters flew backward, arms pinwheeling, mouth open in a silent scream, before slamming into the Escalade's grill. Glass rained down. Karen shrieked, diving behind her clipboard like it was Kevlar. Bear didn't even blink, just kept his teeth bared at the remaining 2 bikers, who were now scrambling for their bikes. I stepped through the smoke, kicking aside a twisted piece of gate hinge. The lead biker groaned at my feet, his leather vest peppered with scorch marks. Contractor, right? I asked, nudging his boot with mine. He coughed, spitting dirt. Jesus Christ, man, it was just a fucking gate. No. I crouched, eye level with his bleeding nose. It was my gate. Behind me, Karen found her voice. This is arson. Terrorism. I turned slowly. She was backing toward the Escalade, her perfect blonde bob now gray with dust. The driver's side window was down just enough for me to see the glint of a camera lens inside. Recording. Terrorism. I wiped grease-stained hands on my jeans. You rolled onto my land with hired muscle to destroy my property, Karen. I gestured to the wreckage. This was just proactive compliance. The Escalade's engine revved. Karen lunged for the door handle, but I was faster. My boots slammed into the door just as it opened. Tell your bosses something for me, I said, leaning close to the darkened window. Next time they want a war. I tapped the glass right where I knew the camera was. Knock first. The vehicle peeled out, kicking gravel into the wounded bikers. One of them limped after it, screaming curses. The other just lay there, staring at the sky like he was reconsidering every life choice that led him here. Bear finally relaxed his stance, trotting over to sniff the wreckage. He pawed at something metallic in the dirt, the Escalade's license plate torn clean off in the chaos. I pocketed it. Reese's pickup came barreling down the road before I could catch my breath. He took one look at the scene and whistled. Damn, Frank. They finally push you too far. They pushed first, I said, watching the last biker disappear over the ridge. Reese nodded, pulling a toolkit from his truck bed. Well, he said, eyeing the scorch marks on the ground. Let's make sure they regret it. 3 days after the gate incident, Bear started refusing to enter the barn. At first I thought it was the smell, maybe a dead raccoon under the floorboards. But when I checked, I found something far worse. A listening device, tucked between the rafters, wrapped in black electrical tape, with a tiny green LED blinking every 15 seconds. Military grade. The kind we used in Kandahar to track high-value targets. Bear whined as I pulled it down. His ears flattened like he was ashamed he hadn't found it sooner. Not your fault, boy, I muttered, turning the device over in my hands. The serial number had been filed off, but I recognized the manufacturer's mark, Granite Tactical Solutions. Reese showed up as I was sweeping the property with my old EOD scanner. He took one look at the growing pile of surveillance gear on my kitchen table and went pale. Frank, that's corporate contractor shit. Karen doesn't have this kind of budget. I nodded, holding up a micro-drone I'd found perched in my oak tree. Which means we're not dealing with just an HOA anymore. That night, we set our own surveillance. Trail cams from Cabela's wired to a closed-circuit monitor in my basement. Motion sensors along every fence line. And the piece de resistance, Reese's special project. A modified baby monitor with enough range to pick up conversations 200 yards away, hidden in Karen's prized rose bushes during her weekly garden club meeting. The first transmission came through at 2:17 a.m. Subject remains non-compliant. A mechanized voice said through the static. Phase 2 authorization granted. Aquifer access remains priority 1. I froze. Aquifer. Suddenly, it all made sense. The sudden interest in my violations, the corporate surveillance, Karen's obsession with my land. They weren't after my property. They were after what flowed under it. Reese met my eyes across the dim glow of the monitors. Well shit, he breathed. We just went from pissing off the HOA to fighting a water war. Outside, Bear began to growl at something moving in the dark. The county records office smelled like mildew and bureaucracy. I flipped through the brittle land deeds. Bear's leash wrapped tight around my wrist. The clerk kept glancing at us, like we might detonate. Looking for anything specific, Mr. Randall? She asked, fingers hovering over the panic button. Just what's mine, I said, sliding a 1923 survey across the counter. There it was in faded typewriter ink. Subterranean aquifer rights, perpetual use granted to landowner. Reese whistled when I showed him. They can't touch you then. Grandfathered rights are ironclad. I stared at the survey marker on my northern border. Since when has that stopped men with money? That night, the first drilling trucks arrived. 3 white vehicles with granite hydro surveys stenciled on the doors. They parked just outside my property line, but their seismic sensors crawled under my fence like mechanical snakes. Bear went ballistic at the bedroom window. I watched through rifle sights as men in clean coveralls planted markers where my wellhead stood. One of them laughed, kicking at my no trespassing sign. Reese arrived with coffee and C4. Heard the jackalls are circling. I handed him the deed. They're about to learn what happens when you poke a badger. We worked until dawn. Reese jury-rigged the seismic sensors to play Yankee Doodle at 140 decibels whenever triggered. I buried the real surprises, pressure-sensitive paint grenades filled with skunk oil and indelible dye. The corporate crew returned at 7 a.m. sharp. The moment their drill bit touched my soil, the earth sang. Their lead geologist screamed as neon green foam erupted from the borehole, coating his $3,000 spectrometer. Through the binoculars, I watched him scramble for his radio. Abort Phase 2. The crazy bastards rigged the dash. The rest was drowned out by Bear's triumphant barking as the second wave of grenades detonated, sending their crew running for the hills in Technicolor disgrace. Karen showed up an hour later with the sheriff. I met them at the property line with fresh lemonade and the 1923 deed. "Morning, folks," I said, smiling over the rim of my glass. "You here to discuss water rights or just admire my handiwork?" The sheriff took one look at the green-stained survey equipment and started laughing. Karen's face turned the same color as the foam now hardening on her designer shoes. This was just the opening salvo. The real war for my aquifer was coming. And when arrived, I'd be ready. The cease and desist order arrived at dawn, nailed to my front door with a hunting knife. Granite Hydro Surveys, LLC. Official notice. Illegal tampering with survey equipment. I sipped my coffee, reading the $250,000 lawsuit threat, while Bear sniffed the knife handle. Reese came barreling up the driveway before I finished the second page. "Frank, you see the news?" He shoved his phone in my face. The local headline blared. "Eco-terrorist, vet halts crucial water research." A corporate spokesman in a $2,000 suit claimed I was endangering the county's water future. Karen was quoted calling me unstable. But the real kicker? A grainy photo of me from last night's defense, captioned, "Militia-style activist threatens progress." Reese's hands shook. "They're painting you as the villain." I crumpled the notice. "They're painting first. The corporate play. By noon, the news vans arrived. A perky blonde reporter knocked on my door, microphone ready. "Mr. Randall, care to comment on accusations you've booby-trapped your property?" Behind her, 2 Granite Hydro Security SUVs idled. I leaned on the porch rail. "Tell your friends in the SUV something." She blinked. "What?" I pointed to the "No trespassing" sign. "The next one crosses that line loses their tires." Her smile faltered. The camera kept rolling. The trap sprung. They came at midnight. Not bikers this time. Professionals. Black fatigues. Night vision. Suppressed weapons. 3 teams moving in sync through the tree line. Bear stiffened beside me in the deer blind. I watched through the scope as the lead operative raised a fist, signal to halt. They'd found tripwire alpha. The operative bent to examine it. Boom. The air filled with powdered thermite, glowing red-hot but harmless. Suddenly, their night vision was useless. I keyed the radio. "Reese, light him up." Across the field, a dozen dummy explosives flared to life, blinking LEDs and alarm sirens. The operatives dove for cover. One screamed into his radio, "Ambush." Full retreat. They never even saw the real threat. The motion-activated sprinklers, now dousing them in liquid tracking dye. The morning after, the sheriff found me sipping coffee as the sun rose. 3 angry men in stained tactical gear sat zip-tied to my fence, glowing ultraviolet under the dawn light. The sheriff sighed. "Frank." I handed him a folder. Security footage, license plates, radio frequencies, and this. A Granite Hydro Surveys ID badge from the team leader. The sheriff's face darkened. "I'll handle this." As he loaded the men into his cruiser, Karen's Lexus screeched to a halt. Her eyes locked on the captured operatives. Then on me. For the first time, I saw fear. She peeled out without a word. The package arrived at midnight. No postmark. No return address. Just my name scrawled on brown wrapping paper, left in the dented mailbox that still bore bullet holes from the last skirmish. Inside, a thumb drive and a single silver key. Bear sniffed it cautiously as I plugged the drive into my radiation-shielded laptop, the one I hadn't used since Afghanistan. The files loaded slowly. Internal memos from Granite Hydro Surveys. Blueprints of my aquifer's estimated capacity. Emails between Karen and corporate executives. Security schedules for their main facility. And then the jackpot. A video file timestamped 3 days ago. Karen's voice, tinny through hidden microphone static. "Just get rid of him. The county board's approved eminent domain proceedings next month. Once we have legal cover, burn the whole damn property if you have to." A man's voice, calm corporate. "And the water? Pump it dry. Leave the veteran as dust." The screen went black. Reese, watching over my shoulder, exhaled sharply. "That's not just greed. That's a death sentence." I turned the silver key over in my fingers. It was cold, heavy, familiar. A master key for Granite Hydro's main compound, the safe house. Derek's trailer smelled like stale energy drinks and regret. The HOA's former tech consultant hadn't shaved in weeks. He flinched when I knocked, then slumped when he saw the thumb drive in my hand. "They were going to kill me," he whispered. "I just did their IT work. I didn't know about the aquifer until..." Until what? I stepped inside, Bear blocking the door. Derek tapped a security monitor showing Granite Hydro's facility. Until they started ordering demolition charges. That's when I copied the files and ran. He pulled up a schematic, my land, marked with red X's at every strategic point. "They're not just taking your water, Frank. They're erasing you." The choice. Reese cocked his shotgun. "We hit them first. Tonight." I stared at the key, the facility schematics, the X's over my home. Then, at Bear, watching me with old, tired eyes. "No." Reese blinked. "What?" I slid the key into my pocket. "We don't attack." I pulled up the county's emergency broadcast system on Derek's computer. "We leak." The firestorm. By morning, it was everywhere. Local news. Social media. The national environmental blogs. Corporation plots veterans' displacement in water grab. The video of Karen played on loop. The schematics spread like wildfire. Protesters gathered at Granite Hydro's gates. The EPA launched an investigation. And Karen? Her Lexus was spotted fleeing town at 5:17 a.m. with 2 corporate suits in the passenger seats. The aftermath. The sheriff found me repairing my fence at noon. Eminent domain's off the table, he said, handing me a folded notice. Governor suspended it pending investigation. I hammered a nail. And Karen? Wanted for conspiracy. They'll find her. He hesitated. The key, Frank, where is it? I smiled. Somewhere safe. As he drove away, Reese emerged from the barn, grinning. So, we keeping that key or planting it on someone? I tossed him a beer. Insurance, Reese. Just insurance. Above us, a Granite Hydro surveillance drone circled uselessly, its feed now hacked to broadcast puppy videos courtesy of Derek. Bear barked at it, tail wagging. For the first time in months, I laughed. The silence was the first warning. No more drones. No more corporate trucks. No Karen. Just quiet. The kind that sits heavy in your chest like a bad omen. Bear felt it too, pacing the property line with his fur raised, growling at shadows. Reese showed up at dusk with a 6-pack and a .50 caliber rifle. They're regrouping, he said, cracking open a beer. Won't stay gone long. I nodded, oiling the hinges on my new gate, triple reinforced steel, welded with my wife's initials hidden in the crossbeams. Then the lights went out. Not just mine. The whole valley. The night they came. They moved like ghosts through the dark. No engines. No radios. Just the occasional crunch of boots on gravel. I watched from the attic window, through my night scope. 6 figures. Full tactical gear. Approaching from the creek bed. The one spot my sensors didn't cover. Reese, I whispered into the radio. East tree line. They're professionals. Static crackled. I see 'em. Wait for my signal. Bear trembled beside me, teeth bared but silent. Good dog. The lead operative knelt, scanning the house through thermal binoculars. He pointed straight at my hiding spot. Frank. Reese's voice tightened. They've got thermals. I exhaled slowly. Time to change the rules. The trap springs. I hit the first switch. Strobe lights erupted across the property, not the weak, civilian kind. Military grade, designed to induce seizures in night vision. 2 operatives went down clutching their eyes. The rest opened fire blindly. Now Reese. A wall of flame erupted along the creek bed, just kerosene and spark plugs, but enough to split their team. I grabbed the second remote. The sprinklers kicked on. But this time, they sprayed liquid nitrogen fog. Homemade, from Derek's stolen schematics. The temperature dropped 60 degrees in seconds. Operatives screamed as their weapon grips froze to bare skin. One made it to the porch. Bear took him down mid-stride, 120 pounds of fur and fury slamming into his chest. The man's scream cut off with a wet crunch. The capture. We zip-tied the survivors in the barn. The leader, a grizzled merc with a Granite Hydro tattoo, spat blood at my boots. You're dead, Randall. They'll send a battalion next time. I crouched, showing him Derek's tablet. A live feed of Granite Hydro's boardroom, where panicked executives debated damage control. Look familiar? His eyes widened. Your bosses are rats, I said. And rats always abandon ship. I played the audio. Blame everything on the contractors. Deny all knowledge. Offer to buy Randall out peacefully. The merc's face went slack. Reese tossed me a gasoline can. Burn the evidence. I shook my head. Better idea. The message delivered. At dawn, the sheriff found 6 shivering mercs duct-taped to Granite Hydro's front gates. Every incriminating file projected onto their headquarters. The CEO's personal safe cracked open. Contents spread across his desk. And one final touch. My original land deed, framed and hung in their lobby, with a single bullet hole through the aquifer clause. The morning after the siege, the world felt different. Not safer. Not quieter. Just heavier. I walked the property at dawn, Bear limping slightly beside me. His right forepaw had been grazed by a stray bullet, Nothing serious, but enough to leave a scar. We both had new ones now. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges. Bullet holes stitched across the siding like ugly embroidery. The creek bed reeked of kerosene and burnt plastic. Reese found me staring at the scorched earth where the flames had roared highest. "We won, Frank," he said, lighting a cigarette with hands that still trembled slightly. I kicked a shell casing. Did we? The aftermath. The news vans came again, but this time they weren't calling me a terrorist. Local vet exposes corporate water grab. Granite Hydro CEO resigns amid scandal. HOA disbanded after illegal deals revealed. The sheriff brought coffee and a folded newspaper. Front page showed the Mercs zip-tied to Granite Hydro's gates. "Feds took over the case," he said. "Turns out they've been wanting to nail these bastards for years." I sipped the coffee. Too sweet. Just how Karen used to drink it. And her. The sheriff's face darkened. Border Patrol caught her trying to cross into Mexico with $500,000 in cash, singing like a canary about corporate conspiracies. Bear growled low in his throat. The offer. The letter arrived on fancy linen paper. Granite Hydro's new interim CEO wanted to meet. "Peace talks," Reese sneered, reading over my shoulder. "They're offering to buy you out." The number made my eyes water. Enough to disappear forever. Enough to buy a whole new life. I folded the letter and tossed it in the wood stove. "Frank, this land isn't for sale," I said. "The memorial." That evening, I welded a new plaque for the gate. Not my wife's initials this time. Just 3 words. We stayed. Reese helped me mount it. Bear watched from the porch, his bandaged paw resting on the rifle I'd left within reach. The first stars came out. Somewhere an owl called. "You think they'll really leave us alone now?" Reese asked. I looked at the fresh scars on my land. On my dog. On us. "No," I said. "But next time, they'll think twice." A year later, the scars had faded. The bullet holes in the barn were patched. The scorch marks along the creek bed had been swallowed by wildflowers. Bear's limp disappeared, though he still favored that paw when it rained. I was repairing the fence, again, when a familiar truck rumbled up the driveway. Reese, grinning like a madman, tossed me a beer. "Heard the news? Granite Hydro filed for bankruptcy last night." I wiped grease off my hands. "Huh. That's all you got?" "Huh?" Reese shook his head. "Man, you just took down a billion-dollar corporation with some sprinklers and a pissed-off dog." I popped the beer, took a long swig. Didn't do it alone. The visitors. They came at dusk, not corporate suits or hired guns. Neighbors. Mrs. Delaney from down the road, carrying a peach pie still warm from the oven. Old man Jenkins with a bottle of homemade bourbon. Even the sheriff, out of uniform, holding a 6-pack like a peace offering. They stood awkwardly on my porch, shuffling feet, until Jenkins cleared his throat. We brought something." He nodded to the sheriff, who hauled out a brand-new gate plaque from his truck. Engraved brass. Same 3 words I'd welded. "W.E. stayed," but underneath, new text. "And we remember." Bear sniffed it, then licked Jenkins' hand. The truth. Later, by the fire pit, the sheriff finally asked what everyone wondered. "Frank, why'd you fight so damn hard?" I stared into the flames, seeing my wife's face in the flickering light. "Not for the water," I said. "Not even for the land." Reese snorted. "Then what?" I scratched Bear's ears. "For the right to say no." Silence settled over us, comfortable this time. The morning after, I woke at dawn, habit not paranoia, to find Bear already on patrol, sniffing the perimeter like always. The new gate plaque gleamed in the sunrise. No drones in the sky. No corporate letters in the mailbox. Just my land. My rules. My quiet. I poured 2 cups of coffee. One for me. One for the ground where my wife's ashes lay. We stayed, I told the wind. And for the first time in years, I believed it.